Your source for everything paranormal. Parax.
Throughout the ages, history has been altered by word of mouth and the misrepresentation of those who might not have been present when some of the world's most significant events took place. Channelers Barry and Connie Strohm bring through the spirits of those who actually witnessed or took part in these historical events and lets them tell their stories in their own words. Welcome to Channeling History. And now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie Strohm.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Channeling History, only show where we speak to the souls that are on the other side, and we're brought to you every Sunday night on the Parax Radio Network. Now, last week we had a few technical problems that prevented us from having the show, so hopefully all's going to go well tonight. I'm Barry Strohm, your host, and I will be doing the channeling.
And I'm Connie Strohm, your co-host. I will be asking the questions of our spirit guests this evening. 2 weeks ago, we channeled the spirit of Fred Rogers, the host of the children's show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, on PBS for 50 years. This was a wonderful show. He was a great humanitarian that truly cared about children. If you missed it, the show's available on our YouTube channel. Tonight, we will be speaking with two spirits that influenced our country and judicial system for many years, Justice Antonin Scalia and Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They came from two different diametrically opposed political and judicial beliefs, but were the best of friends. I think their relationship should be a guide for all of us.
Okay, we never know in advance what our spirits are going to say, and especially with the two justices, I'm sure we have no clue either. So we're going to say a small disclaimer. The opinions or statements voiced on our show are the channeled words of the spirits and do not necessarily reflect our opinions, those of the Parax Network, or of our sponsors.
Barry and I would like to thank all of you that take the time to listen to our show and even join us in the chat room. Your questions are always appreciated, and I always attempt to get in as many as I can. Please tell your friends about us so we can continue to grow our audience.
Okay, Connie, before we pray, geez, tough night tonight. Before we channel, we always try to say a prayer of protection. We know that the prayer gives us protection from the bad people that are on the other side. So Connie's going to say the prayer, and then we will begin to channel with the two justices.
God, please grant us your wisdom and protection. Grant us the knowledge that we can handle and keep us safe from all things that will harm us. Keep the messages positive and pure love. Keep us safe from our egos. We ask these things in the light of the seen, the unseen, and the honesty of God. Amen.
Okay, Connie, this is going to be very interesting. I know we're not going to get through all our questions, so we're not going to take a break tonight. So, Connie, let's get it going. I know it's going to be a good one.
Okay, welcome to both of you. I have a lot of respect for each of you. Would you each like to begin with a statement? We'll begin with ladies first. Justice Ginsburg.
Thank you, Connie and Barry. It's very nice of you to allow me to come through tonight. I know that I was a very controversial person on the Supreme Court. I had very strong opinions. My opinions should not have surprised anyone. I always came from a very liberal background. I always thought that our government should support the people. I felt that the women should have great rights, and yes, I felt very strongly that they should have the ability to have an abortion if they saw fit. There were many things that I truly did disagree with my buddy here, but as you said, we were the best of friends. I was very sorry when he passed and we went to the other side. I truly missed him. I knew that I was in failing health, but I wanted to try to hang on for as long as I could. Great many people were pressuring me to step down. I felt that since there were so many people that wanted me to step down, that the last thing I would do was was to let someone else have my seat for as long as possible. One thing that I always tried to do was bring great respect to the court. I truly resented when people tried to bring political pressure. Today, it's very common that the politicians try to eliminate the individuality that the Founding Fathers gave to the court. There's supposed to be three portions of government. It was meant that the Supreme Court was to be able to act as the arbitrator and to define whether the two houses of Congress saw fit to follow the Constitution or whether they didn't. Today, many people are trying to influence the court. It's a very sad thing, and I think for once, Justice Scalia and myself will agree on that. So anyway, Tony, would you like to speak? Absolutely. You know that I always wanted to say something after you spoke. We had some great discussions. My time with you in the court was truly enjoyable. While I realized that you were mostly wrong in all of your opinions and what you thought, we still were good friends, and I must admit that you thought I was wrong in my opinions and what I thought as well. The Supreme Court is the last bastion of neutrality. If the Supreme Court becomes a political basketball that bounces back and forth to the party's whims, then that could not be any further from what the Founding Fathers decided, and it could not be any further from what is good for the country. In the final analysis, the Supreme Court is the last true protection for the people. Today we're seeing radicals on both sides of the political spectrum. All they want to do is have the decisions that favor one side or the other. What the court has seen today is a total lack of compromise. It is a very difficult time for the Supreme Court. I know that it's not a unique concept that politicians would try to pack the court with justices that see the way that the politicians see. It had been tried before, and sane heads prevailed, and it did not take place. My personal opinion is that at the present time, the optimum number of justices are sitting upon the court. I'm sorry that I left when I did. I can assure you I was not expecting it at the time. I thought that I represented a true belief in what the Constitution stood for and what the Founding Fathers wanted. It is my hope that all the justices will decide that the Constitution is the foremost instrument that needs to be protected, and that all the justices decide that it is under assault by the politicians and by the people that would like to control our government. So maybe this was a bit long-winded for the two of us for our first statement, and I do know that Connie has some questions, so I think that I will stop and allow her to speak.
Well, I appreciated both of your statements. You're both very wise people. 2 weeks ago, we remembered the events of September 11th, 2001, when the World Trade Centers were attacked. What lessons should we take from this event as Americans and as members of God's community? Just let me know who will be speaking first. It's up to you two.
I think that I will speak, Justice Ginsburg. The attack on the World Trade Center shook our country to the core. We always thought that we were invincible. The oceans protected us in the past, but we underestimated the absolute and terrible hatred that many people have for our country. Why do we have such hatred? I think that's the question that should be addressed. It's not the fact that people hate us. People pretty much hated the United States since its inception. But why are we so radically hated today? Could it be that we interfere too much in other people's affairs? There are many people throughout the world that think the United States is trying to dominate the rest of the countries. There are many people that feel that the United States is not truly an impartial arbiter, but is trying to force its will on many of the other countries. It may be true, and it may be a perception. Whether it is true or not is in the eyes of the beholder or the country that has the opinion. What is a fact is that there are still countries and people out there and individuals that would laughingly destroy the United States. Now, we all know that God's will is that people are supposed to get along. The concept of mutual destruction is not compatible with the concept of truly getting along. Yes, you can enforce compliance through the concept of mutual destruction. But I think what the United States as a country has to do is sit back and determine what true role they want to play in world politics. I don't think the true role of our country should be domination over that our country should pursue a role of domination. However, it's a time where there are countries that are attempting to seek world domination. It's an extremely difficult time. Hopefully there will be people in China that realize that their path is not one that should be pursued. The question is, how does a country that doesn't believe in God pursue the concepts of God? I fear that that's not something I have an answer for. But we do know, now that we're here, that there is only one answer. And if human evolution is to last and humans are to evolve to the point that they reach the ability levels of other members of the galaxy, then there are many things that have to change. Justice Scalia, I know you have something to say. Indeed, I do. I thought that the attack on the World Trade Center was the epitome of hatred towards the United States. That morning, I couldn't believe what I was watching. Those individuals flew airplanes into the World Trade Center, and they wanted to kill as many Americans as they could. They took their own lives while they were doing it because they felt that it was something that their God wanted them to do. Now that we're over here, I can absolutely assure you that taking your life trying to kill others is not something that God approves of. The question is, how do we approach this? Now, when you're over here, you truly understand that God wants everyone to get along. They want coexistence. He wants us to compromise. There are many things that he wants us to do. The conundrum is, how do you accomplish it? A major problem is that there are many, many people that don't believe in God. The communists try to end religion. China is punishing the Muslims. They are actually trying genocide to get rid of them. The foundation of a communist or a socialist country demands that a concept of God does not exist among the people who they rule. Our country was founded on a concept under God. How could anything be more diametrically opposed? Well, sadly, I don't think it can. Until all the countries of the world understand that in the concept of mutual destruction, they're also destroyed. Now that seems to be common sense, but I'm not sure there are people that understand that. I know recently many powerful people have been trying to make those in Russia understand that if they push the red button, they will cease to exist. Their country will be gone. Their family members will be gone. What do they hope to gain? China is moving as rapidly as they can to become a major nuclear power. Has it dawned on them that if they start a nuclear war, they will cease to exist? This is not the way things should be. God wants peaceful coexistence, yet the major countries of the world are speeding towards having as much weaponry and means of killing others as they can. So how do you stop it? It's a very difficult question. I think that it has to start perhaps on the family levels, where the people come to understand that coexistence means simply getting along. The countries or the governments today are very powerful. It is very, very difficult in certain countries like China or Russia for the people to truly make their feelings felt. I believe that Russia has exceeded the limits that the people will take in the long run. Perhaps there is hope that finally, after hundreds of years, Russia might understand that they need to get along with others. There's just so much to be done. Once you come over here, you start to truly understand just how difficult it is to bring the meaning of God's words to all of the countries so that everyone can at some time coexist and get along. My belief is that it starts at the grassroots or with the people.
Justice Scalia, in an interview, you were asked about the influence of God on the writings of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. You replied that you saw the influence of English common law and not the Almighty. Now that you're on the other side, would you please comment, and then we could have Justice Ginsburg comment on God's role in the writing of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights as well?
When you're on the Supreme Court, you understand that you're the great arbiter. You need to remain neutral. Now, I always had a strong feeling and belief in God. In my heart, I believed that God played a major role in leading and guiding the Founding Fathers. I also knew that the Founding Fathers did truly rely on English common law. I did not feel that it was proper for me to state that I truly believed that God had guided the Founding Fathers. I knew that there were many people that would be alienated by that comment, although I never really worried about alienating people that much. But I thought that it was a proper answer. I didn't necessarily think that it was the right answer, but I thought that it was an answer that would not bring any dissension. In my heart, I truly understood that it was one nation under God that was created by our Founding Fathers. They were pretty specific about it, although there were members that did not believe in God. So they also had to face the idea of compromise. The original documents were written so that it would not alienate those that did not believe in God. Of course, it was also written that it would not alienate Southerners over slavery, which is totally wrong. So there were portions of the Constitution that obviously were not directed by God, but it was a wonderful document, and I truly believe that with the amendments that were made to it, that it serves as a foundation that the current politicians and judges and attorneys need to understand and follow. Justice Ginsburg? I took a little different look or view of the Constitution. I felt that there were major omissions in what the Founding Fathers put into the Constitution. You are correct in pointing out that slavery was a major omission that the early fathers failed to address, and which led to a major civil war. I also understood that in many instances the rights of women were overlooked in the Constitution. Men could vote, but women couldn't. Slavery was permitted. It was a document that I felt had certain flaws to it. I thought really that it was a work of compromise of men. I had trouble seeing just what interplay God would have had in constructing the document. The document had what I felt many flaws in it. That's why even the Founding Fathers realized the flaws and came up with the first 10 amendments, which were the Bill of Rights. I felt that if God had truly directed them, that there would be a much more even allocation of rights for men and women. Early in my career, I decided that I wanted to pursue the flaws in the Constitution that I felt were there, and that I wanted to interject ideas that would strengthen women's rights. I also felt that one of the rights that a woman should have is the ability to make decisions concerning her own body as it applied to abortion. The Founding Fathers, I realized, had never heard, well, they probably heard, but they never did anything to address abortion. It wasn't a problem in those days. They never ever conceived that a child in the womb would have rights beyond those of the mother. Now, maybe that is just my interpretation, but I could not see in the Constitution where the women rights were addressed when it came to childbirth. Now that I'm over here, I do understand things a bit differently. I guess that when I was on your side, that I felt it was my place or my duty to enforce women's rights wherever I could. And I naturally assumed that abortion was part of that search or quest for equality and rights.
Justice Ginsburg, would you please comment on whether you feel the Bill of Rights restrains government power over the individual and allows for the exercise of free will? And then Justice Scalia, will you please comment on the question?
As I said earlier, the Founding Fathers realized that the Constitution was a flawed document. They attempted to assure that certain rights would be guaranteed. The Bill of Rights falls way short of many of the guarantees that should have been included. I just spoke of one, which is simply the woman's right to vote. There are definitely instances where the Bill of Rights restrains government power over the individual, and those amendments were meant to restrain that power. The Second Amendment gives individuals the right to defend themselves and carry weapons. At the time of the writing of the Constitution, that was a very important right. The country had just fought a war with Britain. They had won. The British tried to restrain the rights of the Americans in their ability to have firearms. But keep in mind this. In those days, there was not a well-defined military. There were not well-defined police forces. There was not a federal police agency. There were not institutions that were to guarantee safety of the people. So, the individual rights of a firearm were basically required in those days for self-protection. It was also thought by the Founding Fathers that it was possible that the individuals would need to protect themselves from the government itself. In that instance, the government or the Second Amendment was intended to protect the rights of the individual over those of the central government. Today, many things have changed. We still have rural areas where firearms are required for protection. But we have many people abusing the use of firearms. Would legislation stop the bad people from having guns? Probably not. But have things have changed enough in 250 years that unbridled freedom should be investigated? There are many issues that need to be addressed. I know my buddy here would like to talk about this one. In many ways, the Bill of Rights protected the individuals from central government. Today, the central government is trying to erode many of the rights of the individuals. You don't have to be a brilliant scholar to see what is going on. The founding fathers felt that freedom of speech, freedom of the press were required in order to assure that the frailties of government were illuminated. Today, we are seeing that the press is not restrained by writing the truth. The Founding Fathers never conceived of anything like social media. Today, it is possible to mislead millions of people. There are times that the absolute rights of speech or press must be protected. The Bill of Rights had good intentions in those areas. Those rights still have to be protected. But the question becomes, what limits should be placed upon the conglomerates that are determining what appears on your social media or in the press? Today, it is difficult for the people to understand the true concepts of truth. In the early days, the press was vicious. The press had little compulsion against attacking politicians. The press did what they felt was proper. Today, the press is more influenced by money and political power. The Bill of Rights can indeed be interpreted as restraints. I see a need for people to consider the protection of basic rights above all other things. Freedom of religion is especially important. Without freedom of religion, all of the other rights will eventually be eroded. If a government is allowed to dictate how people worship, then the right to understand, the right to all the other freedoms will go away as well. One of the first things that the great Antichrist governments do is to limit religion. The communists do not want individuals to speak of God. The socialists are trying to eliminate God as well. Individuals must learn to understand when their rights are being eroded. It is only through the political process that they can assure that their rights are protected.
Okay, Justice Scalia, you and Justice Ginsburg could not have been much further apart in your beliefs on constitutional interpretation, yet you were the best of personal friends. Will you please tell us the secret to your friendship? And then will Justice Ginsburg answer the same question? I think all of Washington, D.C. needs to hear your answers.
We respected each other. The key to getting along is respect. There were many times that I felt that my friends' interpretations were not according to the Constitution. I felt that there were many times that she was not correct, but I always knew that she was consistent. I always knew that she was following her true beliefs, and I always knew that she really didn't give a crap what other people thought about her opinions. I thought that that independence was a wonderful thing. We actually had quite a bit in common. Opera, for instance. We loved the opera. I think that if more people went to the opera together, they would probably learn to get along. I don't think you look at some of the music today and you listen to the hip hop and the swearing and the cuss words in the music, that going to that type of a concert would help to seal many friendships or help seal many misunderstandings. I shouldn't say this where she can hear it, but I truly did respect her intellectual grasp of the law. She understood the law, but I often felt that she simply misinterpreted it. You can understand something and not interpret it correctly, but she was, and she still is actually, a wonderful spirit. She was actually quite easy to get along with. We could discuss things, we could differ, but we did not show anger. Sometimes she refused to listen to my logic, but it never angered me. I knew that she was a friend. I knew that she was someone that I could speak with. We spoke of many things in our lives, and we did many things together. Just because a person differs on an issue does not mean that you should show hatred towards them. Justice Ginsburg. Damn, I wish you would have told me some of that when we were alive. It would have made it would have made good interest for me. Anyway, we really did get along well. Tony was a good guy. He was emphatic about his interpretations of the Constitution. I was emphatic about my interpretation. We knew we could discuss the differences. We knew that there were times that we could find compromise, but we also knew there were times we could not find compromise. We enjoyed doing things together. Now that we're here, we understand truly what God's teachings are. You see, in life, we never showed hatred towards each other. We would perhaps get a bit angry. I know there were times that I thought he was being very blockheaded, but I know that he thought the same about me. But we always knew that we were friends. Sadly, today, when we watch some of these people that thought they were friends have turned to hate each other over political differences. We were affected a lot at the end by the lack of cooperation. We never let it affect us personally. We always realized that friendship is something to be truly valued. The key to friendship is understanding, and the key to friendship is not showing anger and hatred. That destroys friendship. There's no way that an individual can swear and cuss at another, cannot understand the viewpoints of the other. Since we're here, we truly do better understand the concept of coexistence and love. I'm not sure what has to take place so that the individuals on the incarnate side of life can learn many of the lessons that we learned in life.
Justice Ginsburg, as you mentioned before, you were a staunch proponent of abortion and women's rights. Will you please tell us where in the Constitution you found justification for abortion, and what do you see as the impact of overturning Roe v. Wade? What impact do you think that will have on state courts? And Justice Scalia, also please comment on the same question.
As I stated earlier, I felt that the rights of women were abused in the Constitution. They were treated as secondary people. They were not given the right to vote. And as the assertion for women's rights became more prevalent, the right to abortion became more talked about and became a much bigger issue. Obviously, as I said, abortion wasn't an issue for the Founding Fathers. But as medical science progressed, abortions became safer for women, and there were many women that were emotionally not ready to have children, had many reasons not to have children. The laws stated that abortions were not legal in many areas. I felt that women should have the right to choose. It was what I believed in my heart, and it was what I fought for, and it was part of the whole idea that women were suppressed. I did not truly understand the concept of when a fetus becomes a viable human. I realized that there was nowhere place in the Constitution where abortion was immediately addressed. I felt that it was a rights issue. And I felt that a combination of different portions of the Constitution and of the amendments thereto would justify the fact that women would have supreme authority over their own bodies. I thought that it was a right to their privacy. I thought that whether they would have a child or not would be protected under those clauses. I welcomed Roe v. Wade when it was passed. In my heart, I realized that some of the reasoning was not proper, but I felt that it was important to assure the rights of women. Now that I'm over here, I understand that abortion is indeed ending the life of a child and aborting a life plan of that individual's soul. It is a very difficult issue. I know now that God certainly does not approve of abortion. But for me, it is still something, it is still a very difficult issue for me. Justice Scalia. Abortion was one of the things that we truly did debate at length. I could never find any justification in the Constitution that allowed the taking of the life of an infant. I totally understood that the Founding Fathers had not addressed it. I could not see where it was specifically addressed in any of the amendments to the Constitution. I thought that any attempt to legally justify the idea of abortion and to allow it to take place was a rationalization of the law. I would like to point out that now that I'm here, I truly feel that I was 100% correct in all of my beliefs. As Ruth stated, now that we're here, we totally understand that God is not in favor of taking the life of an infant in the womb. We've discussed it over here, and I think that she's truly come to a different understanding, although she is still very much involved in the concept of freedom of choice. I have absolutely no doubt that freedom of choice does not include the taking of a human life. That has been my opinion. That will always be my opinion, and I'm very happy to say that now that I'm over here, I firmly believe that it is the correct opinion. My belief is that the revoking of Roe v. Wade is going to create many difficulties in certain areas. The liberal areas especially are going to resent it, but it's going to be sent back to the state to determine. Most people don't understand that it's now going to be a true states' rights issue. Each state now has the ability to vote its conscience. If the state does not approve of abortion, then there will be most abortions will then be cut out. If the state is liberal and believes that it's proper to take the life of a baby, then it will become legal in those states. There will always be places that women can go to have legal abortions. It becomes an issue that will be decided by each state. States' rights needs to be protected, and I think that through time, things will settle down. Conservative states will not allow abortion. Liberal states will. Women that feel they should be able to make that choice will probably move to those areas, and vice versa. I always felt that Roe v. Wade was a gross mistake. I felt that now that it is appealed, that the law is being interpreted as it should be. It is truly a moral issue. Once you are over here, you will truly understand that the taking of a baby's life will be something that an individual will be able to decide.
Okay, this has been a great show, and we still have so many questions that we're going to have both of you back again next week. We're currently running out of time, but will each of you please make a short closing statement? Once again, ladies first.
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I hope I hope I didn't offend too many people. My ideas certainly differed from my friends here. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. I always tried to be true to my beliefs. I think that is one of the most important messages that I can bring to anybody. Be true to your beliefs. Be true to your convictions. If you believe something is right, then defend that right. That's what I did. I wasn't always correct in what I was defending. Now that I'm over here, I understand that in certain instances I was totally wrong. But I tried to follow my conscience. If you look at my record, I was very, very consistent. Consistency in the judicial system is required to bring equality. There should be the same justice for everyone, from the person in the street to the President of the United States. Nothing should differ. If all of the justices and the attorneys followed their convictions of right and wrong, it would be a far better world. Thank you for allowing us to come back again next week. I know that you had many more questions, and perhaps we were a bit long-winded, but I will let my friend here make his statement as well. Thank you for the opportunity. In life, I was never too bashful about speaking out what I believed was right. I felt that the Constitution was the core instrument that needed to be followed. I felt that the Founding Fathers laid out a document that would assure longevity to the government of the United States. I felt that if we varied from the strict interpretation of that document, that we would be setting precedents that would ultimately bring an end to the governmental system as we understood it. There are times that individuals must defend what they feel is right. I strongly believe that our politicians need to reflect the will of the people and not the will of the donors that pay the big bucks to them. My opinions might have gotten me in trouble. They might have alienated many. But I, too, was consistent. I did not vary from my belief that the Constitution was a document to be followed. It was not a document to be interpreted by individuals that thought it should be interpreted in a different manner because that was their individual belief. Once you allow individuals to change the interpretation of the laws to match their personal beliefs, then our system will cease to exist. It takes consistency. It takes people with virtue. It takes people that are not afraid to make decisions. Justice, as my friend stated, should be the same for every individual. Individual people in this country should resent any attempt to alter or influence the Supreme Court. It is the institution that stands between the congressional houses and anarchy. So thank you. I'll be looking forward to next week. I hope that I didn't bore anyone.
You did not bore anyone. You're both delightful guests, and I think it's very important that we all hear what your thoughts are on so many things going on today.
Okay, as Connie stated, we're going to have the two justices back again next week. Please tell your friends about your shows. They can feel free to join us in the chat room, submit questions of their own. If you want to submit questions or suggestions for future guests, use our email, channelinghistoryonparax@gmail.com. That's channelinghistoryonparax@gmail.com. We did not do any commercials today, so I'm going to get a plug in for my new book, my 8th book, Messages of God for a Modern World. We're hoping for the release around the middle of October. It's a book simply consisting of the channeled messages of Jesus. It's a long book. It's a great devotional. I hope you tell your friends about it. And when it comes out, I hope that you buy some copies of it. It's going to be available in softcover, and it's also going to be available in Kindle. Signed copies for all my books are available on my website, spiritspredict.com, or wordsofgodthenandnow.com. All of our shows are available on our YouTube channel. You can hear this show. I'll have it up by tomorrow morning. Tell your friends about it. Everything that we do is available. So thank you for listening. Please join us Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Para-X Radio Network.
And I would also like to thank you for joining us. God bless you all. Have a wonderful week.
Thanks for listening to Channeling History. Tune in again next week for another electrifying episode, as we never know who will make an appearance or who will come through the portal. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2020. Our Story Begins by Kevin MacLeod, licensed through Incompetech.com.